Yo, hey folks, it's Kevin, Big K Horror, and I'm going to do this small little video collection review of, I guess what you'd call the French New Wave of Horror, you know, that came out in the 2000s. It's this very small collection, and it's actually just 4 films I've got. But hey, those 4 films I got pack a fucking wallop, I gotta tell you, man. Alright, so I'm gonna start out with this one. And this movie I came across in late 2003, and I found a bootleg copy online when it was known as Switchblade Romance. This is about like a year and a half, 2 years before the actual movie came here to the States as High Tension. And as you know, High Tension, but Switchblade Romance. This is the old bootleg copy I got of it. It's kind of like not as gory as the cut we got, but still very intense and gory. Regardless, it grossed out a lot of my friends I showed, but here's the actual copy I got. Grand fucking movie. Let me just tell you real quick. When I heard about this movie, it was from my Rue Morgue magazine. I want to grab it over there. Anyway, it's from my Rue Morgue magazine with the chick splattering blood on the cover, and I remember reading the whole entire article about it, and I was frightened when I got home that night because I read it at my friend's house, and I was frightened. I don't know why, but I was. And this was like one of those new horror movies where I was just like, oh my god, this is going to change everything. And it kind of did. It changed a lot, you know? And these guys, Alexandre Aja, you know, and everybody, they went on to do some good things, you know? With like The Hills Have Eyes, Piranha, you know, the Maniac remake, P2. But, Mirrors, we won't talk about that one. Anyway, but High Tension. This was a grand home invasion slasher splatter flick of sorts. Very, very mean-spirited. Very, like, the gore is from the same guy who did a lot of the gore for the early Fulci films, or the Fulci films from the early 80s involving, like, you know, City of the Living Dead, aka Gates of Hell, you know, that kind of thing. House by the Cemetery, I think. That guy did the gore to this film, and it shows. Very gory, buckets of blood shit, man. Alright, so High Tension. I love this movie. It's epic in my book. And even the twist, man. People want to bitch about the twist. That's cool. Bitch about the twist, you know. And hell, even I'll bitch about the twist sometimes. But you know what the twist did? It made us talk about it. It made people at parties talk about the movie. It made you try to, like, dissect it and, like, you know, dissect it. And anyway. Next up is another wet movie that I showed friends before, and it's like tough for them to watch. It's tough for me to watch, but it gets worse in the list. But this is second to the first of the worst. But this is Inside. This is one wet, visceral movie, and it involves about a pregnant woman who's about to get pregnant, to bear her baby the morning before Christmas, on Christmas morning, but the night before on Christmas Eve, she's being taunted and attacked by a wild woman outside her house that wants to get nothing but to get inside the house and cut that baby out of her to keep for herself. Enough said. A wet, fucking visceral movie. Alright, so next up. I haven't watched this one in a while, but I remember I really liked it. It had a lot to do with what was going on in the French government at the time, with a lot of the French riot, a lot of the riots going on in France, and a lot of the protests, and as well as, you know, this is a good mix of grit, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of horror, and then it's Frontiers, and this movie was very brutal. I was shocked by a lot of stuff I saw in this movie, especially the people burning up in the gas chamber alive. Or the heat, the oven. That was just, oof. This movie is hardcore though, but it reminded me of like a mix of Devil's Rejects meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets French Splatter. I don't know, but man, this movie was intense. Alright, so last but not least, and I know this is a very short video, but I'll talk about this one for a while. This movie is what kind of stopped me from buying French horror movies. Not because I'm against French horror movies. I love French horror movies. But, well, after that, there was around this time where I was getting laid off, and I couldn't really, you know, afford a lot of movies. You know, actually, I mean, I got laid off 2 years after this movie came out, and then 2 years after I bought this movie. But there was around that period of time where you didn't see a lot of French horror coming out, a lot. And I stopped buying movies around that time, during that time, because I didn't have the money to, as opposed to, you know, whatever. But, I bought this movie the day it came out, back in 2009, May of 2009, and it upset me, it thrilled me, it made me think, it bothered me. It got under my skin, and I couldn't shake it off. And I'll tell you right now, I'll never, ever watch the third act of this movie ever again. Maybe the first hour and 10, 20 minutes, sure. But the third act of this movie, I'll never watch this. Then that's powerful filmmaking right there, you know? So I just gotta say that. But the movie, I'm sure some of you already know what movie I'm talking about, and that is Martyrs. Alright, this movie got under my skin like no other. And the first hour, I think, is fucking genius. When she comes back to get revenge against that family, or the parents of the family that did this horrible things to her. But when it gets... And then I love the whole thing with the girls... mind fuck going on with her, with that other creature girl coming and attacking her. That's all in her mind. Like, that was great. That girl from her past that she never saved when she ran for her life. Like, that thing that keeps coming back to attack her, like, in vengeance. Like, that was a grand thing, I thought. But when it gets to, like, all the torture, the beating, torture, and force feeding, and skinning alive stuff, like, in the third act, I couldn't deal with that. And seeing it once was enough for me. So I'll watch the first hour of this movie, but after that, I'm done. So that's Martyrs. So that's all, you know. So these movies, I mean, like I said, they're not a huge collection, but these are the pivotal French splatter from the 2000s movies to own. Martyrs, High Tension, Inside, and Frontiers. And I have to say, all my favorites, I have to say, well, the ones I can watch over and over is High Tension and Inside. Frontiers gets a little disturbing, a tad. Martyrs is grand, and I think it's actually, I would even go so far as to say it's genius. I just can't watch the third act, so that does take it off the notch of being my favorite, though. So I can't watch the whole movie. So there you go, Martyrs, High Tension, Inside, and Frontiers. If you've never seen any of these movies, I highly recommend you check these out. All right, that's all I gotta say about the French Splatter pack. All right, peace out.